Maryland's win versus USC was exactly what the Terps needed.
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tre Moore, host of Locked On Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. So thank you for making us part of your day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. And also, I'm doing work with InsideBlackandGold.net. So make sure you guys go over to InsideBlackandGold.net for all your latest Terps news. That win against USC was exactly what the Terps needed moving forward and in general. I think that win against USC was one of the cooler things I've seen happen for Maryland football and the Maryland sport. And I haven't been watching forever, but that was one of the cooler wins that I have seen. And I think that was a win that you're on the ropes for your entire year. The fans are ready to cut your necks off, and everyone's saying fire Mike Locksley, and the program is going in the opposite direction. And it's a win that you absolutely needed for almost every part of your football team. When you go through every part, and I'll talk about all the different components that impact this win, it's a huge win, and it's exactly what the Terps football program needed. I mean, just to start, whenever you beat a team the caliber of USC, it brings in a new energy, a new momentum to your program that the Terps didn't have before. And I think beating the USC Trojans really brought some new type of momentum to the program, brought a new energy that we didn't have from not only just the team, but outside the team too, from the fans to people around the country. People were talking about this win. This was a big win. And yeah, a lot of people were talking about it. A lot of people were talking about the perspective of USC, but a lot of people are also saying, what a job by Maryland. What a job by Mike Locksley to beat USC. Both teams have been struggling. Both teams haven't been great. Both teams are better than their record indicate. But you bring a new momentum to your program. And whenever you can bring a new momentum to your program, it can really help for the rest of the season. One, I think it helps the players. When you get a win like that over USC, you're more excited for the next game. You believe you can beat anyone. You're more confident going into the next game. You're excited instead of being down because you just lost a heartbreaker to USC in a game where you felt like you could have won if it went the opposite type of way. And you're like, we're 0-4 in Big Ten play. We're not going to make a bowl game. What's the real point? Instead, you beat USC. You're energetic this week. The guys are excited. You just got to make sure you put that onto the football field and you don't let that become a letdown moment next week against Minnesota, which is another big game in terms of our season at 3:30 on Saturday. So you got to make sure you put it in the proper way. But I think that winning against USC creates a new momentum that the Terps program was lacking. And you saw it at the games. Not a ton of fans show up. The players aren't as energized. There's just not as much energy. There's not as much enthusiasm that surrounds your program when you can't win these types of games. But when you win a game like that against Lincoln Riley and USC, it is much needed for the Terps. I think the Terps fans needed that. And I think that when we look at it, the student section is decent at times, but a lot of the crowd's not completely filled. And when you beat a team like USC and you have your fans rush the field, it creates a new type of memory for those fans. And they're more likely to want to come to games this season and next season in the future. And everyone knows the atmosphere for Maryland does matter. And I think another thing that had is a huge impact on is recruiting. We had a lot of our 2025 commits in the building for that time, for that game against USC, which was an important win, because I think that I think it's fair to say some of the recruits are probably questioning, why did I choose Maryland? Is this where I should have gone? Is this where I need to be during this time where we started losing? We were 0-3 in Big Ten play, and things didn't look good. But a win against USC is exactly what you need to happen for your recruiting. And it allows you to get to a spot where your recruiting hasn't been when they're in that type of atmosphere. I think what's been missing from Maryland recruiting to take it to the next level is just the fact that we don't have that type of crowd that, like, some of these, even these Big Ten schools that aren't even like better than us necessarily at football, but they find a way to bring in huge crowds, still sell out games. Like a team like, let's say, Nebraska, a team that's not necessarily much better than us, but when you go to a Nebraska game, that thing fills up. And there's other programs, of course, just like that. Even like an atmosphere like Michigan State is better than a Maryland atmosphere, and it makes it harder to recruit when recruits don't see that type of atmosphere. But when recruits see you beat USC and rush the field, then that's when you start get it going on a really cool type of recruiting visit. And I think that the recruits that were there, guys like Malik Washington, and some of those other high level guys, who's now Malik Washington, now top 50 player in our class, when guys see that, they're going to get excited. They're not going to want to decommit. And I think our 2025 class, I was nervous that some of those guys would leave. I thought it was a possibility, and that 2025 class is the best class that Mike Locksley has had. And so now that you beat USC, you get a much needed win for not only your football team, but this is how college football works. When you win in other ways as well, and you get a much needed win for your entire football team, which I think is a really important part of it that a lot of people don't consider when you win a game like that. And then I think another reason was a much needed win. We're going to struggle to get to a bowl game this year. Even with beating USC, I think beating USC really brings out a really good opportunity to be able to do it. And I think that we are definitely have a really good shot at getting to a bowl game. Now we just have to win 2 more games, which I think is entirely possible with their schedule, because I'm looking at it and there's 3 games that I think are all winnable. Iowa, Rutgers, and Minnesota. You got to win 2 out of 3 of those. Oregon and Penn State, I still don't see us winning that type of game, especially because they're on the road in those type of environments. I just don't see it. Oregon's number 1 team in the country, Penn State's number 3. But winning that game gives you a much-needed opportunity at a bowl game. And I think Maryland's been a bowl team the last 3 years. We've won 3 straight bowl games. I think that's the goal, and that's where we want to be at least. That's kind of like the bare minimum of what we want to be at. And I think that beating USC gives you an actual opportunity to be able to do that. Whereas if you lost to USC, it was going to be really tough because you would have had to win out versus Minnesota, Rutgers, and Iowa. Now you can drop one of those games and still fight your way towards a bowl game. But I think that it's a much needed win for just every step of your football team. One, for your actual football team, for the momentum that it creates. You can get into the personnel. I think when you look at it, how the players played, much needed win for Billy Edwards coming off a shaky little stretch of the season. I don't want to say he's playing horrible, but definitely shaky. Much needed for Octavian Smith, a kid like that, who's been always a talented guy, but I don't think he's quite shown what he could be. How about Scruggs getting that pick? Much needed win for him. Different guys on your football team needed that win and that momentum. And then, of course, in terms of the bowl thing, you want to make a bowl game. You want to get there. That's where we are as a program. It's a much needed win for that. I think it's a much needed win for recruiting. There's plenty of visitors there. There was all types of visitors. We got commits from that game that I'm going to talk about later, but a much needed win in terms of that as well. So I think that Maryland beating USC really created opportunity for that this season was lacking a lot of. We were lacking chances. We kept dropping them. And finally, I think maybe most of all, much needed win for Mike Locksley, who seems to struggle in some of these bigger games against some of these bigger programs. And when we have them on the rope, we're not usually able to finish it. And USC, we were able to finish the job and we were able to beat the USC Trojans. So much needed win for that entire Maryland football program. And it's an exciting thing. And hopefully, we don't go to letdown mode. There's a lot of big news to get into. Cameron Edge decides to enter the transfer portal. Does that hurt the Terps? I'll talk about that after this ad from Roy. Hey, Locked On Terps fans, it's time to recognize the Roy Player of the Week. So far this season, we've pulled over $20,000 to support players on Roy. Micro deposits lead to massive change, and with the Roy app, you can direct your support to the athletes you love, ensuring that all funds go to that specific player you choose. Unlike collections, you know exactly where your support is going, and you even receive exclusive content like personal videos and updates after the season. The best part, it's risk-free. If the athlete transfers or doesn't deliver the content, you get your money back. This week, I am supporting Octavian Smith. I love for you to join me and to help make it different. Let's show Octavian Smith the love and keep him connected to our school. Remember, play today, celebrate tomorrow. Your support sets your team up for success. Plus, don't miss out on Roy's exciting giveaway with 2 tickets to a game in November. Just download Roy, create an account, and enter the referral code Locked On, and you're entered. Already on Roy, any contribution to an athlete's campaign also gets you entered automatically. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited. Download Roy now and join the NIL game with no subscriptions and no fees. And be sure to check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and X at Roy_return on you for more info. Support the players, change the game. So we got news that Cameron Edge plans to enter the portal. And to be completely honest, it doesn't surprise me one bit. I also don't think it hurts us. I liked Cameron Edge. I thought that he had a good chance to maybe have an opportunity to play this year, but I also knew that it felt like a two-man race, and I don't know if that was fair to Cameron Edge. It felt like a two-man race between Billy Edwards and MJ Morris. I don't know if that was completely fair to Cameron Edge, but I do know that if it was pretty much always a two-man race, and it felt like even if Cameron Edge played his best ball, I didn't think he was able to win. And I said it, Cameron Edge might be our best choice for that quarterback battle. And I'm not saying that he would not have performed this year, but I do think that Mike Locksley did make the right decision with starting Billy Edwards. And Mike Locksley made that decision knowing that he was probably going to lose Cameron Edge if he was to start Billy Edwards. And I think that it's the right move for Cameron Edge. I think that him leaving is what's smart for him. I think it makes sense. Billy Edwards has one more year of eligibility. MJ Morse is still here for now. Malik Washington is coming in. And so where does he fit into it? It doesn't really feel like he does. And I think he has a chance to go somewhere and play. I don't know at what level it is, or I don't know if it's still Power 4 football. I don't know exactly, but he's a guy that someone's going to scoop up and be really excited about. A former 4-star recruit. He has a lot of talent in terms of his arm talent. I think that what kind of put him behind maybe a guy like Billy Edwards is he kind of lacks a dual threat ability that you want in college football in today's game. And specifically behind a Maryland offensive line, you kind of need some of that, to be honest. Our offensive line isn't that great, hasn't been that good. And I think that if you threw Cameron Edge in there, it would be hard for him to be effective in there because he'd probably get hit a lot. He's not the best mover. It's not like he can't move at all, but he's not the best mover. And so it's like, where can he kind of be effective? And I don't know. The Maryland offense feels like it needs someone that can kind of get out the pocket, roll around. Talia was able to do that some. Billy Edwards is able to do that more. And I think Cameron Edge didn't exactly fit that. I always said I thought he had the best arm talent out of all those guys on our team, out of the entire quarterback room. But it's hard because with our offensive line, it probably was going to be really hard for him to still be as high level as he could be somewhere else. I wish he got more of an opportunity here, because I did think that he was a really talented guy. And I think that it's just like, for me, the Terps program isn't going to hurt from this, if I'm being completely honest. It might hurt some of the players who are close to him and those type of things, but I mean purely as a football standpoint. And I've talked to Cameron Edge. I've interviewed him. Great kid, and really bright future. Really smart kid. Seems like he's always putting in extra work in those types of things, and he seems like a really good type of guy. But I think it doesn't kill us in terms of football, because I don't see where he would play. I don't see him playing next year in front of Billy Edwards or Malik Washington. Malik Washington's the best quarterback recruit we've had in a long time. I don't know maybe ever. I think that would be fair to say. Malik Washington's probably our best quarterback recruit ever and has a chance to really do something special here. And Cameron Edge is good, but Malik Washington is going to be the guy. And that's just what it is. And I don't know how quick it's going to happen next year. I don't know if it's going to be right away and Billy Edwards is going to give it to Billy Edwards is going to have to give up the job halfway through the season, whatever the case is. But Malik Washington is going to be the guy here in the future. And so I think that there wasn't really a huge plan for Cameron Edge in the future when we got Malik Washington. And then as well as Billy Edwards starting over him, like, it made sense for him to leave, because I don't see where he's going to play in the future. Billy Edwards already beat him out, and then Malik Washington's coming right behind him. Where do you see an opportunity for him to play? Sure, it might hurt our depth a little bit, but unless that quarterback room starts to get injured, it won't really matter a ton, knock on wood. And so I think it's absolutely the right decision for him. And this is when I really like the transfer portal, because I think a guy like him, who just is a really good player, just needs an opportunity to play maybe somewhere that can actually protect him and that he won't have to scramble around a ton. I think that it's really smart for him to go play somewhere else and to see how it goes. I think for him, that's definitely the smart way to go about things. And I think that that's what he should do. I'll be interested to see what kind of program picks him up, but I do believe that Cameron Edge is making the right opportunity with deciding to go. I think that that's the right choice for him, and I wish him all the best, because I think that I just don't see a spot where he can play in the future. And he's a guy that's talented enough to play in a lot of different places, and I hope he is successful wherever he goes. But he does plan to enter the portal, and I thought it was important to talk about that. He never really got the opportunity to play, but I do think that a lot of people are high on him and think that he can be really good in the future for the Maryland Terrapins. Let's talk about some recruiting. I have a little basketball recruiting news as well as some football recruiting news. Maryland lands a couple guys, and there's a big decision today. We'll talk about that after this ad from FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Guys, you got to get over to FanDuel. The NBA is starting today. I know a lot of you guys like to bet on the NBA. If you want to bet on the Celtics game tonight, or if you want to bet on Jason Tatum points or Jaylen Brown, whatever you want to do, go over to FanDuel, as well as LeBron and the Lakers play tonight. There's so many different things that you can bet on, as well as the World Series is coming up, and the Yankees are going to have the opportunity to win. If you want to bet on that, you can do that on FanDuel. And of course, football, college football, NFL, whatever you want to do, it's all on FanDuel. Make sure you guys go over to FanDuel. That's FanDuel.com. So the Terps, in beating USC, land 2 big recruits. And remember, I talked about this. When you beat a program like USC and people are there when you do it, you start to bring some momentum in the recruiting. And that's what kind of happened with the Terps. They landed 2 brothers from Calvert Hall in Maryland in the Baltimore area, 3-star prospects, excuse me. And Elijah Hammond and Isaiah Hammond. Isaiah Hammond plays on the defensive line, is listed at 6'6", 275 pounds. Exactly the type of guy we need in there. I think we've lacked some size and some depth on the defensive line unit, but getting a guy at 6'6", 275, and a guy, I love guys that they can put their own college weight onto them, I think is a really big thing and something that I think is really going to help. And so he's out of Calvert Hall, like I said, a 3-star prospect. And then Elijah Hammond plays linebacker and is listed at 6'2", 205 pounds. Another guy we can bulk up a little bit. It is ranked as the number 57 player in the state of Maryland. So I think that getting those two guys are a big deal. Whenever you can secure two brothers, that's a pretty cool, a really cool thing to do. And I think they're both going to help you in the future for Maryland football. And I think exactly what I talked about, getting a win against USC, and then you start to get some recruiting momentum and you start getting some guys that liked what they saw at the visit, like what they seen when they're at Maryland, like what they seen when Maryland beats USC. So landing these two guys and the fact that they're brothers that get to play together. We have a couple of those guys on the team that are brothers, but I think that's a really cool opportunity for them. Whenever you get to play with blood, that's something that's a really awesome opportunity for Maryland basketball or Maryland football. And then I also want to talk about Cameron Ward, who's actually making his decisions today in 8 hours. And I talked about him the other day, really talented top 50 recruit. It does look like Michigan State is the favorite. It does look like Michigan State is where he'll end up most likely. But I do think that Maryland is second and very much in the mix. And we've seen crazier things happen. He's ranked as 54th ranked nationally by 247, the 11th ranked power forward, 2 in the state of Maryland. Really top end player that is absolutely a guy Maryland would want. I just don't see us being able to land him because it just sounds like Michigan State is really on top of him. But we'll see. He makes his decision today. There's 2 crystal balls that are predicted for him to go to Maryland. That's why I say that I feel like he's most likely probably going to Maryland. But a 4-star recruit, 6'7" power forward, sounds like he has a ton of ability and a ton of room to grow into. But I still feel pretty good about Maryland basketball recruiting and where it's at. I think we've done a good job of getting different guys, and we're going to be talking more basketball soon here. There's going to be more basketball to talk about very soon. It'll be interesting to see what kind of happens this year, but we're under 2 weeks away from getting into basketball season. So that's going to be interesting as well. But getting those 2 brothers, I think, are big, especially a big defensive lineman where they also had those 2 brothers. I forgot to tell you guys, had Pitt, West Virginia, South Carolina, Virginia Tech, Boston College were all in the mix, but they decided to go with Maryland. I think it'll go well with some of the big guys up front that we have recruited, like Bryce Jenkins, who's a big one, Dante Recker, Brahim Battles, Delmar White. We've gotten Nasir Taylor. We've recruited some big boys up front, and I think that that's important for Maryland football overall to get some of these big guys up front. I think that we need that, and I think that's going to be a big part of our football team is being able to develop some of these big boys up front overall and see what can happen with that. That's all we have for today. Thank you for listening to Locked on Terps. Make sure you like and subscribe. We're here every day talking Maryland football and basketball. So thank you for listening to Locked on Terps.